Hi guys, it's Nat O'Leary and this is my YouTube channel. I can't take myself seriously, but babes, hi. I'm Nat O'Leary. I'm a Radio 1 presenter and presenter in general. You may know me from the PLT podcast, from Pretty Little Thing, or just from social media. You may not know me at all. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about my career and what I've been up to in the past few years, because you lot asked for it, so here we go. Recently I did a question story on my Instagram and lots of people were asking me, lots of you were asking me about my career, how I'm juggling PLT, how I've got into presenting, all of that kind of stuff. So I've always wanted to kind of talk about it, and I was like, do you know what? A video is probably the best way to do it. So here we are. I am going to sit with you guys today and just talk through the questions that you sent in on my question story and just make everything a little bit more clear on what I'm doing. So if you do follow me on social media, you will have seen recently that I have left Pretty Little Thing, which is a massive, massive life change. And I think those who know me understand kind of how PLT has been for me in the past, especially year when I've been doing Radio 1. But I know a lot of people, a lot of you, don't actually understand how I've done it or what I've been doing. So I'm just going to tell you everything. This is what we're going to do today. I'm going to look at some of the questions that you guys sent in. I'm going to answer them. But I'm going to start with PLT, so the elephant in the room. So basically, oh my God, I have, until last week, worked at PLT for the past 7 years, which is wild. I started off at Pretty Little Thing as a social media assistant back in 2016, back when the company was, I thought it was big, but I mean, it was nowhere near what it is now. With that, I've had the privilege to watch the company grow and grow and grow and be part of those huge moments and milestones for the past 7 years. It's been a journey, a real journey. But yeah, so I started off as a social media assistant back in 2016, and straight away, there was like me and one other girl, Katie, that did social media. Now they have a team of like 12 and there was two of us, which is crazy. But straight away, Uma, who is the boss, got me in a room and was basically like, you do drama, yeah? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, so you can present? And that was it. Like straight away, I started presenting tiny little things for PLT. Prior to that, I had gone to uni and I did a drama degree at Liverpool John Moores University, and it's safe to say I'm a bit of a drama queen. Do you know what I mean? I've always loved being in front of the camera, so it was just a natural step. I did actually pursue acting when I left uni, and I got to the point where I was kind of like, okay, this doesn't feel like it's moving, and I knew that I couldn't just continue. I was working in a pub at the time. I was like, I need to try something else, and it was like, what else do I love? And I was like, well, I love social media. I'd grown up with it. You know, then obviously like TikTok wasn't a thing. It was more just Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat even. They were kind of the main channels, as well as Facebook. And I decided to go for a job at PLT and I got it. I feel like I'm going in circles here because the story is so big and so long. And yeah, luckily the boss, Uma, and my boss and friend, now friend Nikki, saw something in me and they were like, you should present for PLT. And I think one of the first things we did was like, when Montana Brown left Love Island, we did a huge, one of the bigger like things we did a big Facebook Live, because they were huge at the time, of me interviewing Montana, playing games. Like, we were the first brand to kind of do these kind of things, and it was incredible actually looking back that everybody put their trust in me to do that, because I was a baby. I was a real baby. So for years we did like Instagram lives, Facebook lives with loads of different celebrities. We used to do little chatties. So I remember we did like, when Ryan Thomas came out of Big Brother, I interviewed him. I got the exclusive interview, which is hilarious. I hadn't actually watched it. Sorry guys, at the time, which I can't believe I'm admitting. I interviewed Maya Jama. I obviously with PLT traveled the world. I went everywhere. It was an absolute journey. Like, I wish I could put clips in here because I mean, it was just insane. But if you look back at my YouTube, I mean, they're embarrassing, but I'm going to keep them there because they're really good memories for me. There's lots of previous trips and things. But yeah, so that's kind of where my presenting started. Like I said, I did have a drama background and an acting background, so it's not too far away. And I actually found that I preferred presenting, because when you're acting, you're taking on a character, you're taking on a role, you're pretending to be someone else essentially. or that's how I see it. And with presenting, I was just being me. So I'm combining two things I love, but I'm just being me. So I actually found it more enjoyable. I found that I was more authentic, obviously being myself, and I just fell in love with it. And fast forward a couple of years, after we were doing loads of little things, our boss, who was friends with Stephen, or is friends with Stephen Bartlett, they had a chat and they were like, you know, PLT should start a podcast. And I remember hearing on the grapevine, like hearing that we were going to start a podcast, and I was like, oh my God, who's going to be the host? Who is going to be the, like, I was like, I really want to do this for PLT. But I don't think I ever actually voiced it, because I'd probably been there like maybe over 2 years, about 2 years. And at this point, I probably was now a social media executive. So all the while with PLT, whilst I was doing like presenting stuff and like learning and doing different videos and things like that, I was also progressing in social media in the business. So at this point, when we were asked, or when we started speaking about a podcast, there was probably like 6 to 8 of us on the team then. So remember, it started at 2, then there was like 6 to 8, and I was at least a social media executive. So I'd gone from an assistant to an exec. Yeah, that'd be right. Later down the line, the decision was made that they had a host. I got called into the big boss's office and I was told I was going to be the host of PLT Behind Closed Doors. And honest to God, if I hadn't of been given that opportunity, I probably, or I might not, I mean, I'd still have the drive and the passion, but I might not be where I am now. Which I don't think I've sat and thought about in a very long time. So yeah, thinking on that, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So the PLT podcast was born, and I mean, I can't even listen to the first episodes because I was a baby, and I would definitely say that is where I learn everything. That is where I really found myself as an interviewer, as a presenter. I mean, it started off, the first ever recording we did was with Felicity Haywood. She was a babe, and luckily me and her get on so well, so it was incredible. I remember we were in pyjamas, we were on beanbags, we were recording with Maya Jama that day as well. She was our first episode that we released. And you know, me as a young Nat, looking at Maya Jama and everything that she had done at that time, and I mean, look at her now, she's a superstar. I just felt so privileged to be sat down with these people and be like, I'm really doing this. And yeah, the PLT podcast really took off, and we had such an incredible few years. Like, I remember being flown to LA last minute to go and interview one of the Kardashians' best mates, or someone from Love Island on a rooftop at the Roosevelt Hotel. Like, it was honestly the most wild journey, and my favourite memories of PLT are from doing that podcast. It was incredible, but all at this time, I am still working as a social media executive, so I'm busy. I was busy. Actually, I think I must have been a senior exec when we actually started the podcast, so I got promoted again to a senior executive. It was busy, let me tell you. But that in a nutshell is kind of what's been going on. So yeah, in the past year, things have changed a lot. Okay, I think I should do some questions because that's why we're here. So the first kind of question was, can you talk about your career and journey so far and how you found your way? And I think that's a really lovely question, and I know that was one of 3. Annabelle, she said, I'm about to leave uni and navigate my career in my 20s, and it's a bit daunting. Awesome from Nantwich too. It's mad seeing you do so well, keep smashing it. Well, Annabelle, thank you so much. Leaving uni and like navigating all of that is scary. Like, whether you go to uni or not, like, I'm all for do what you like. Whether you're coming out of uni or you're coming out of college, or you've been traveling and you're deciding, right, I want to decide on my career and you're still not sure, or whatever, that part of your life is daunting. It's scary, but do you know what? One of the best sayings, I don't think I'll say it right, but one of the best things I always say is like, the biggest things in life are scary and they're going to lead you to something amazing. So don't be too worried. I feel like I remember being in that position when I left uni, and I was acting like I said earlier, and I really didn't know what to do. So I did the most basic thing in the world, and I literally drew out like a spider diagram like you would in high school or probably even primary school. And I just wrote out things that I enjoyed, because one of the things for me is I always wanted to do something I enjoyed. Obviously, my dream when I was younger was to act, and then it developed into presenting. But at that time, it was like, okay, I need another option whilst I still pursue acting on the side. That was always the plan when I started PLT. So my best advice is just create a vision board, create like something where you can write down all the things you love and all the things you want to do, and work out how you get there. And that's either chatting to people, applying for jobs, having a job and seeing whether it's what you want. Because I always think as well, like, you have so many ideas of what a job is actually like, but you do not know until you do it. I remember when I applied for my job at Pretty Little Thing, the social media assistant role, all that time ago, and I didn't even understand really what a marketing department did, because I was, you know, I'd done drama for 3 years at uni. I'd never worked in that kind of environment, especially within fashion, and going and doing that, having that job, it teaches you so much. Now, like, the experience I've had from PLT has taught me so much about life and taught me so much about business, especially obviously within marketing. So go and try jobs, go and get experience, speak to people. Like, don't be too worried about the process of leaving uni and finding what you want to do. Like, enjoy those years, because they are the best years ever. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here. So a couple of questions here. Somebody said, how did you start your journey as a presenter? I've kind of explained that then, but then people are saying, how did you get into BBC? Did you apply or were you headhunted? Okay, so here's the actual tea. So all the while, whilst I was doing the podcast, whilst we were doing press pause, whilst everything was going on at PLT, when I was doing lots of presenting, I was like, I really want to take this one step further. And one of the things I had always wanted to do was radio, specifically for Radio 1. I was always like, do you know what? I want to be on Radio 1. That is my goal. And I never really knew how I would do it, but I was determined to get there somehow. And I used to email the bosses. I used to send over like media cards, which is basically like a piece of paper which says like Natalie O'Leary, presenter, and has like my experience, and it's like CV. And basically, rightly so, I was ignored. That's just not how it happens, or not, it didn't for me anyway. So I, luckily actually, with PLT, one of the huge things we did was go to events like BBC's Big Weekend, Radio 1's Big Weekend, the BBC Teen Awards, and I attended all those events, and I did the presenting at Big Weekend for PLT, I did the presenting at the Teen Awards, and that, from working with them, through a girl actually called Abby, who, shout out Abby, I love you so much, and she had emailed PLT like, we'd love you to come down to an event and get some social coverage with your presenter and that, and I was like, yes, this is my foot in the door. I want to be at Radio 1. I'm going to do this. So that's kind of how a relationship started, and from there, that's when I started trying to bombard them with my like media cards and things. Anyway, it wasn't until like maybe a couple of years later, BBC run a scheme called the Christmas Presenter Search, and it's where 30 presenters come onto Radio 1 and they take over the airwaves over Christmas. So it's an amazing initiative if you are into radio, if you want to get into this. This is like the biggest and best opportunity out there. I don't think there's anything better going. And for it, you have to send a demo in, which is basically a recorded clip of you basically being a radio host. So I remember one year I said to Abby, I was like, Abby, I really want to apply for this. And because she'd always said to me, you would be so good on Radio 1, but obviously she didn't have the kind of opportunity to put me in touch with people. It's just not how it works. So she'd always said you'd be really good on Radio 1. So I remember seeing this Christmas Presenter Search and saying to Abby, like, I really want to apply for this. What do you think? And I remember at the time she said to me, I think they're looking for really experienced radio presenters. So maybe it's not the right time. And I remember being like, oh, okay, and being really upset about it. I saw all the lovely people go through, and it was amazing. And a year later, or maybe 2 years later, I think, I saw it again and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to apply. So I put together a demo and I sent it in. And it wasn't for months and months. I mean, it feels like months and months. I don't know how long it was, but basically I was on holiday and I hadn't heard back. And you upload it onto this little uploader. And I was like, oh my God, 5 people have listened to my demo. Like, that's surely good. Like, come on, someone, like, I've got to. I was so confident in a way, like I'd got to this point. This is the really interesting point, because when I first wanted to apply, looking back now, if I would have applied then, I know I wouldn't have got it. I wasn't ready. I probably wasn't as driven as I am now, or I was at that point when I applied, and as confident, because don't forget, at this point, I've now interviewed like Saweetie, Ashanti, like I've been flown to New York and sat waiting to interview Little Kim. Like at this point, I've got a lot more confident than I was them 2 years ago. So I'm so glad I didn't apply then and I held out. But yeah, anyway, so after an excruciating probably 2 months of waiting to hear back, I finally heard back. And I remember I got a phone call and I was in PLT. It was like the week before Black Friday, which is a huge thing. So PLT was so busy. And I went into a little room and I was like, hello? And yeah, I was told that they liked my demo, BBC liked my demo, and they wanted to get me in to do a live demo in person. Long story short, that is how I got my first opportunity at Radio 1. So I did the Christmas presenter search. So I was on air on the 30th and the 31st of December, and this was in 2021. And from that, we all got some feedback in January, and we were told that a few people may be invited back to do more shows. I absolutely lost my mind when I was asked to come back and do more shows in May. So I did the early breakfast show in May. All this time I'm still working at PLT, so I'm either booking annual leave, I'm working around it. Like honestly, PLT was so supportive. This is literally last year, it's crazy, but it feels like a lifetime. I had like the best time doing the early breakfast show, and then I went and did BBC's Big Weekend, but for PLT. So all this time I'm still working. Like I was juggling a lot, but it was so worth it. And then it wasn't until after I did early breakfast, so I did that for 4 weeks every Friday, where I took over the early breakfast show. So that was from 5 in the morning till 7. Very early mornings, getting up at 3 AM, so worth it. That's basically it. I got that second opportunity with Radio 1 to do the early breakfast. I then went and did Big Weekend, and then I remember for like a few weeks after just not hearing anything back from Radio 1 and being like, oh my God, like I just want to be there full time. Like when I got on the radio for Radio 1, I knew, I was like, this is all I want. This is what I want now. And being perfectly honest, as much as I love PLT, the podcast had taken a break, it stopped, and I was like, I just can't not do this. Like, I just want to be a presenter full time now. This is really what I want. And it wasn't until a few weeks later when one of the boss, the big boss of Radio 1, called me, or he texted me on a Sunday, and he was like, what are you up to today? And I was like, and at that point you're always like, oh, and I'd done some cover actually. I left that out. They'd asked me to like Ariel Free, who does the early breakfast show, that's her slot, she was off, and they'd asked me to cover, so I had done some extra bits as well. And of course I was like, yep, I'm available. I just knew at this point this is what I wanted to do. So the big boss called me or texted me, and he was like, what are you up to today? And I was like, oh my God, if you need cover, like I'll be available, like no matter what. But I was driving, my boyfriend was answering the phone, he was texting back for me, don't worry. And he was like, I said, hey, like, Luca texted him back saying, hey, I'm currently driving back to Nantwich for my brother's birthday. Is there anything I can help with? I'll be back in Manchester in the next couple of hours. And he was like, okay, good to know. Like, and left it at that. And I was like, good to know? Like, do you want me to, like, is there cover? Like, what's going on? At this point, I'm thinking he wants me to cover a show, but he's checking whether I'm available because it's a Sunday, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, Luca. Anyway, we went out for lunch. And Ali texted again, and this is hours later, and he was like, random question number 2, how far do you live from Media City in Salford? And I was like, you know, I told him, and he was like, cool. And he basically said to me, he was like, okay, I don't usually do this, but we're having some photos taken of Radio 1 presenters at 7 o'clock tonight. We wouldn't usually do this, but I'd love you to be involved. Could you make it by any chance? And I was like, you want me to have my photo taken for Radio 1 with the Radio 1, but I'm not a presenter? And I was literally sat at lunch, and I remember like my mum's face and my brother's face, it gets me emotional just thinking about it. Like everyone was looking at me like, this is it, but no one wanted to say it because obviously, oh my God, I'm literally tearing up. I don't know whether it's because I'm hungover. I don't think anyone wanted to say it just in case, like to jinx it, because they knew and know how much this means to me. So I text back like, yes, Alid, no problem, I'll be there, like party popper emojis, like, you know, I will be there with bells and whistles on, babes, whatever this is, I'll be there. So I gets back to Manchester, I like touch up my makeup, I'm like, what on earth do I wear? What even is this? Like, okay, it was really hot. It was like July, it was July. And I drove to Media City, I parked up, and Aled was like, I'm actually here too. So I'm like, oh my God, the boss is in Manchester. He's normally based in London. So I'm like, what is going on? This is insane. He was like, so call me when you get here. So I called him, he told me where they were, and I went down. And I spotted him and this photographer, and it was just them two, and I was like, okay. And then I walked past Dean and Vicky, who are two other Radio 1 presenters, and I was like, hi guys. And they were like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And I was like, I don't really know. And I remember Dean was like, text me afterwards. So I get down to Aled, and he's just like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good, thanks, how are you? And we're chatting. And then he's like, yeah, just have some pictures done. So I'm stored, like posing, like so awkwardly, because I'm nervous, I'm excited. I'm like, what is going on? I'm having my pictures taken with this photographer. I'm just posing away. And then the photographer says, get some shots of you and Aled. So me and Aled stood next to each other, and we're like, you know, smiling away. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I've just had a load of pictures taken of myself, and now you want me to, my mind is fully gone on the floor at this point. And then the photographer says, okay, can I just get some candid shots of you two? So imagine me, the boss, the big boss, I stood like this, side by side. We literally turn like this to face each other. And he's looking at me and he's like, how are you? And I'm thinking in my head, you've already asked me how I am. Like, what is going on? Will someone just tell me? And I can't remember the exact words he said because it's a blur, but he said something like, okay, so the real reason you're here is I wanted to ask you, how would you feel about having your own slot on Radio 1? And oh my God, I can't even say it. Honestly, in that moment, I think I pretty much fell to the floor. I was just, okay, I didn't actually fall, but I was flabbergasted. I was absolutely flabbergasted. Like, I've never used that word before, but that's the only way to describe it. I was screaming. I was like, what? I was literally like, what on earth? I was like, oh my God, yes. And I was crying my eyes out. Anyway, he was like, yeah, so we're going to start a brand new show called Radio 1 Naughties from all the 2000s, and I think you're the perfect person to host it. It's going to be on a Sunday. And I was like, listen, I'll do whatever. I'll move to London. He was like, nah, it's just one show for now. I was like, okay, no worries. And I honestly, in that moment, that was the best feeling of my entire life. I don't know if anything will ever top it. Yeah, it'd have to take something pretty special to top that feeling. So that is how I got Radio 1. God, I've been speaking for ages. But yeah, that is how I got my slot on Radio 1, and I've now been doing it for 4 months. And it's just been the most incredible journey. I've had so many incredible opportunities within Radio 1. I'm loving life. I just want to be there every day, basically. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Loads of people have kind of asked me about how I'm juggling PLT and BBC, and in all honesty, it was difficult, but PLT were the most supportive ever, giving me time off, allowing me to run away to London at the drop of a hat. Obviously, I live in Manchester, if you didn't know, where PLT is based. They were just amazing. They did everything to help me, and essentially, when I found out I got my slot, it got to the point where my manager Becky was like, or we probably had the conversation earlier, she was like, I know that your life's about to change, and like eventually we're gonna have to think about you leaving PLT, like it's inevitable. It was a really emotional thing because I know she didn't want it. I really in a way didn't want it, like it's been such a huge part of my life, but we had to start thinking about my departure. And that's where I am now. I have now left PLT. But yeah, that is basically it. I was juggling both jobs. The podcast was on pause, so I didn't have as much like presenting stuff with them. I had the odd thing like events, like we did Molly's Runway, we did Radio 1's Big Weekend, like I said, and any little event like that, like Nella Rose's launch party, that was amazing. So I was still, yeah, working away between the both, but I have now stepped away so that I can fully focus on being a presenter. full time. I'm going to be spending more time creating stuff like this now that I have the time. I was also lucky enough to sign with my dream talent management last year in September or maybe October, and I have a lovely manager, Megan, who is working away on the sidelines for me. So I'm in a really happy position in terms of what I'm doing, and hopefully you will see and hear a lot more of me soon. This isn't the end of my relationship with PLT completely. I will still be working with them in a presenter capacity, so if they have a big event that they want me to host, or if they ever brought back the podcast, I mean, who knows, I will still be working with them on a freelance basis, which is so exciting because they are family. I love them so much, and I never want to completely end that relationship, and I'll probably pop in for a brew most of the weeks. But yeah, that's me. I feel like I've just spoke for ages. Hopefully that wasn't boring. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers all of the questions. But if you do have any more questions, or you want to see anything specific from me on my YouTube channel, please do let me know, because I am going to be making loads more stuff. And hopefully I won't be as hungover as I am right now. But yeah, it's so nice to be back, and I'll see you all soon.